Christopher, thanks so much for being with us here. Your film, The Stand, premiered at the 2024 Vancouver International Film Festival, where it took home the Audience Award. Congrats on that. So obviously before the historic agreement was signed last week, why was the 1985 logging blockade something you wanted to make a film about?
Yeah, I wanted to make a film about this because my aunt and uncle were there in 1985. So this was a way for me to honor them, and I didn't know what it meant beyond the fact it was Lisle Island 1985 blockade. And so I thought this is a big part, I think, of our Haida history. I should really know this story. So that's the crutch of how it kind of began for me, and it opened such a wide door, such a huge story. Yeah, I just had to dive deep and try to tell it in the best way I could.
A big part of the Haida history, and like you said, a big story, but the action is referred to as a hidden true story of Indigenous resistance. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not often, it's rarely talked about outside of the Haida community, I think. I don't think much of Canada knows this story and that it happened. But it was done with such intelligence, I think, and such grace, and from all parties, it seemed, like even the RCMP and the Haida and the loggers as well. Like, no, there wasn't really violence, right? But there's still a lot of tension, and the people are still putting their lives on the line and their freedom on the line to say there's no more logging here. So says the Haida.
I guess, kind of a hidden chapter in history, but hours, hundreds of hours of actual footage. And the images are striking, that we've seen them play out time and time again at other acts of resistance, though. Any thoughts on why history continues to repeat itself?
Well, I think it continues to repeat itself because there's I guess, because there's laws and there's the economy that keeps rolling over other people, I think, and especially with the First Nations and the Haida, for instance, we were quite down and out, I guess, in a lot of ways. After smallpox, our population decimated, and then there came residential schools and the banning of arts and the potlatch and residential schools, as I said. But so we had to watch while the land around us that had been sustained just kind of kept being poked at and pried, and their mines and timber, barge after barge was being taken off. And in 1976, that's when my Auntie Dolores Churchill stood up at the potlatch of Oliver Adams, who became Chief Galah, and said those very same things. Timber's just leaving the islands, barge after barge. Something needs to be done, and that was the galvanizing speech that moved the Haida into action and doing what they did, because they needed to stand up for the land that sustained us, or there was going to be no Haida culture left, and there's going to be no land left for us to continue. So it was now or never.
How does that blockade 40 years ago now play into the historic agreement recently signed by Canada and the Haida Nation recognizing Aboriginal title on Haida Gwaii?
Well, yeah, that agreement, it all started there at the blockade. This was the starting point. It's why it's so fascinating that I happened to start working on this film 4 years ago, and we were 2 months to finishing, and BC signed with the Haida to recognize Haida title. And then now just recently, Canada followed suit and signed recognizing Haida title as well. Like, such a far cry from where we were. It's even in the film where the Premier BC was like, they do not have it. They do not have the right to this land and stuff like that. And so it was just like it's an amazing journey, but that took half a lifetime for it to come. But it did come, and it's a joyous moment.
Well, indeed, and a really fascinating film. Like I said, the images are just incredible. Christopher, appreciate you taking some time to speak with us about it, and wish you continued success out there on the festival circuit.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking with me.